This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Mary Lou Kaiser here. Welcome to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast, where we explore what it means to play your position in a world that is constantly changing, where we are faced with new decisions almost every day, and where growth is the only way forward, just like in a football game. Your team is driving the ball forward into that end zone, right? So if you are new to PYP, welcome. If you are a longtime listener, welcome back. It is Monday, April 19th, 2021. As of this recording, I am enjoying a beautiful spring day on Long Island outside of New York City, where I am visiting my family. I'm in my hometown for the next couple of weeks, and I've already been here for a few days. It's been terrific to reconnect given the events of the last 15 months or so with COVID-19 and restrictions on travel and all that stuff. I see signs of the world opening up again, albeit slowly and cautiously. People are continuing to take precautions, wear masks, socially distance, wash hands, all that good stuff that is helping us reach herd immunity. I think that's the big goal. But life moves on. And again, if you've been listening to me for a while, you know that I am a big proponent of the philosophy that life moves in only one direction, and that direction is forward. So this month of April, my word is attitude. And I recorded an episode a couple weeks back where I defined attitude, and today I wanted to share a quote I found as I was doing my morning routine. I stumbled into a reading, and oh my gosh, it's one of those quotes that hit you right between the eyes. It's by a man named L.P. Hartley, and I'll read the quote in a minute, but first let me give you some context. According to Wikipedia, L.P. Hartley, who was born Leslie Poles Hartley, he was a British novelist and short story writer. He was known for writing about social codes, moral responsibility, and family relationships. In total, he published 17 novels, 6 volumes of short stories, and a book of criticism during his lifetime. He was born in 1895. He died in 1972. So he was living, he would have come of age right around World War I. He would have lived through the Roaring '20s. He would have lived through the Depression. He lived through World War II. When you think about it, we as humans have lived through events. The pandemic certainly is a generational moment. It will shape people of a certain age, probably for the rest of their lives. And people like L.P. Hartley, who lived at a different time and was seeing change and innovation and advances in technology, he had his things to say about it, just like lots of people have things to say about today, including myself, right? But the difference today is access. Today we have access to platforms where we can share our thoughts, whereas back in the day when L.P. Hartley was writing, there were gatekeepers. There were systems in place that should you be someone who is interested in writing books, for example, or writing poetry or writing essays, you had to go through a certain you have to climb a certain ladder. You had to know certain people. And today, anyone with a Wi-Fi connection and a laptop and the ability to get into a platform or build a platform of your own, like a blog or a podcast, can share ideas, thoughts, reflections about social codes, moral responsibility, family relationships, for example. The quote that I found that spurred on today's episode goes like this. The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. I love this quote. It was one of those, like I said before, it hit me between the eyes because I thought, oh my gosh, of course, people who are constantly traveling to their past and looking for what they remember life was like. I think it's interesting when I meet people like that because I'm not like that. Now, I love to travel. I have spoken about my travels around the world. I have loved visiting foreign countries, learning about different ways of life, experiencing different cultures, tasting different foods, hearing different languages. This has been a huge part of my life until lockdown happened and that faucet was shut off for everybody. And the fact that I have traveled and I'm seeing people travel, my plane was full. They are selling middle seats now. That is a new thing. The past, that's a different kind of place to travel to. So let me share with you my thoughts about this post and how it's relevant to any of us today who are building businesses, working for businesses. Hartley was a prolific writer, there's no doubt. If you've published 17 novels, 6 volumes of short stories, and a book of criticism, even by today's standards, that is a lot of writing. He wasn't shy about sharing his ideas. He wanted to share his ideas. He was influenced by people like William James and Hemingway, of course. During that time, Hemingway was a huge influence on writers. If he were living today, I suspect that he would have a blog along with several books on Amazon, maybe a podcast or a YouTube channel or both, most likely a TEDx talk with several thousand views. Twitter might be his social media channel of choice, but he might also shun tweeting for its overall lack of depth and substance, choosing instead a platform like LinkedIn where he could mingle with people he felt were more of his intellectual stature. If he were living today, people would say LP showed up and shipped. Okay, he showed up and shipped. Now, showing up and shipping is the name of the game today for anyone who has chosen to build a 21st century business or practice. Solopreneurs, freelancers, small business owners, entrepreneurs, even employees inside of Fortune 500 companies are required to participate through their words and ideas in one of the numerous collective conversations going on at any time. It's just the way it is. There is an expectation now that you show up and you share. Now, the degree at which you choose to participate in one or more of the conversations going on at any given time has more to do with your goals and less to do with what's in vogue. In other words, it's contextual. And what is important is intentional participation. We can all think of people that we've seen during times of scrolling social media where we wonder, what on earth were these people thinking? Why did they post that, right? Why did they post that? You wonder. It may be embarrassing to you. It may be something that you thought, I would never share something as private as that, or something as ridiculous or stupid, or whatever word you want to use to describe what you saw. Now, for that person, what they shared could have been highly intentional because maybe their brand is about being stupid or ridiculous or absurd, right? We don't know. Because of the volume of what people publish and ship, we're exposed to all the time. And you just go on any channel and you're going to enter into that feed, which is this endless loop of same old shit, different day. I mean, that's the philosophy that some people have. My brother is one of them. My brother chooses not to participate in social media. He thinks it's a waste of time. He sees people buried in their phones as he's out and about doing his work. He's in construction. He builds custom homes. And he just shakes his head and says, what are you doing with your life? And that's a valid point of view. I've often joked with him, hey, if you started a YouTube channel, you'd actually build a following because there's enough people out there who agree with you and you have a personality and you have things to share. And he chuckles and says, not going to happen. And that's okay. That's okay. He participates in his own way because he is shipping. He is producing every single day. When you build a house, you're shipping. It's just the way it is. Now, going back to the context of the world I'm in and many of you are in, many of my guests are in, we're living a life online. We are living a life offline. And the context of what I'm talking about has to do with shipping online. Some people are prolific producers, prolific participants like Seth Godin, who has been writing a blog post every day for more than 20 years, I think. It might even be longer. There are other people who don't show up as often, but when they do, the people who appreciate their point of view notice what they share and they engage with what they share. So there's a variety within the spectrum, which you would expect, of course. And again, the ease of sharing our thoughts, our observations, and criticisms of today's social codes, moral responsibilities, and family relationships is almost laughable. It is so easy to share. Anyone with a Wi-Fi connection, a laptop, a smartphone, I was saying this earlier, anyone can post what they're thinking about, no matter how banal or profound. This is a relatively new phenomenon, and not everyone has embraced this change, hence my brother. Some are openly critical of it, hence my brother. But like it or not, this change is now part of the economic landscape. It has worked its way into our daily lives. And just for the record, my brother does have a smartphone, and he does answer emails using his phone, and he does like to Google things when he needs to look up information. So he's participating in his own way. He's just not publicly publishing and posting on platforms that are available to us. Now, just like social sharing plays a role in our professional lives today, so does looking at the past for clues and lessons about how to live in the present successfully while also preparing for the future. Which brings me back to the quote that inspired this episode today. The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. Here's how I interpret this quote. While learning from the past can be useful, I'm not going to argue against that. It really can be useful. Living in the past is not. We can visit the past now and again. We can marvel at what we see, but the past is gone for good. We can't get it back. We can't go back. Life moves in one direction, forward motion. Growth, otherwise known as change, is the natural order of things. And my awareness of this truth is heightened every time I visit my hometown, where many of the houses, including the one my parents still live in, were built in the 19th century. I am actually recording today's episode from the third floor. We call it the tower room. It has 3 windows. It's a tower. And I'm looking out. I can see the harbor in the distance because the leaves haven't fully come out on the trees. And this house was built in 1895. Now, like many of the houses in this village, this house has been renovated to meet 21st century standards and aesthetics. It's had fresh paint, a new roof, replacement gingerbread. The front porch has been updated, and it shows the pride of my parents. You know, they want their house to look nice. And for the other houses in town that are also old, the updates show the owner's desire for longevity and bringing an old house into the present and also preparing it for the future. Now, inside these old houses, you're going to find new crown molding, high-speed internet ports, renovated coffered ceilings, granite countertops, and smart refrigerators, to name a few things. These kinds of things reflect today's needs and tastes. Okay. I can't live without internet. My business depends on internet. So thankfully, my folks have Wi-Fi that allows the old to mix with the new. So what's cool about this house, it's an old house. It has character. There are stories about this house, the previous owners and the people who first built it. And we have photographs of this house in its early days with the original owners standing on the porch, and their dogs are in the picture, and the trees that are around it hadn't really grown yet. I mean, it's really interesting. Those photos, that past is brought into the present and then prepares us for the future. Bob Vila, I don't know how many of you know of him. He made his fortune with that formula of bringing the old houses into the new. He had a long-running show called This Old House. I think it's still on television. At least it's in syndication. And his whole passion was about bringing old houses into the present and enjoying them for years and years to come. When I hear people longing for a return to the past, or I see people talking about, remember before Facebook, and remember before Twitter, and remember before even before the internet, right? And yes, I do remember those days. I'm old enough to remember life before the internet, life before Facebook, and any of the things that we now take for granted that are part of our landscape. But when I hear people go down that rabbit hole, I wonder how useful all that nostalgia is. Yes, those days were wonderful. And yes, those days are over. We're living right now. We are April 2021, and then we'll be June 2022, and then October 2031. I mean, life moves forward. Wishing for a time that has ended, in my opinion, blocks forward progress. It keeps people stuck, sometimes stubbornly so, because what's in front of you right now, that's all you got. Yes, you can have memories. Not a problem. My point ultimately here is do things as you can with what you know. Play your position the best you can today, and then tomorrow show up and play it a little bit better. Imagine a better future and take action toward that future today. That's what people who update their houses are doing. That's what people who show up and share their point of view are doing. That's what people who embrace and use new technology are doing. That's what LP Hartley was doing in his time. The past is a foreign country. It can be a fun place to visit, but would you really want to live there? This is Mary Lou Kayser. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast. Remember, it is always a great day to get out there and play your position. See you next time.
Got a great key offensive strategy you like to share? Write to us at coach@pyppodcast.com or on Twitter, use #PYP and let us know how you're running your ball into the end zone for those game-winning touchdowns.